In this first video of the build series, I am going to talk about the stuff I removed from the back, so everything behind the front seats. I'm going to talk about the stuff I removed and how I built the platform and the storage and the other stuff that I put in here to make this bed platform. In subsequent videos, we're going to get into these cabinets you can see. We're going to get into what I did with the passenger seat. We're going to get into my electrical system, plumbing, all of that kind of stuff. But for this first video, we're just going to talk about the build platform and your options for that. So let's get into this build. Okay, so with everything removed, we can start to build in what's going to be my bed platform and storage. The first decision I made was, so this is the hybrid battery. So I decided, there's some honeycombing on the covers. I decided to stick with the original cover for the hybrid battery. So this just clips on. It takes some effort. You can basically rip it off. You won't break it. And so, nothing in your car is level. But what I decided to do was basically use this as my straight edge to get the rest of it at least in line with this. So the next thing I did was to build the frame that's going to hold essentially the exact same cover that I took out, but that it doesn't have a floor that covers the spare tire. So the thing you want to do with this is you want to make sure you build around this vent so that it's not going to be clogged. So I'll show you what I came up with. So I built this frame using 2x2s. So it's a big square opening. There's a little kind of rectangle here, and here's where the vent is going to go. And so I built that before I added legs. And then, so let's stick this in. I built that before I added legs. And then what I did was I sort of propped up that rectangular frame. What's a bit strange is that the angle ended up not being straight. So the battery, I think itself, is not square. So this is I don't know if you can tell that this is actually widening up as it comes in this direction. But then here is the exact thing that I cut. You can see it's got the little divots, just like the original one. And it's on a 30-inch piano hinge. And so, yeah, I have access now to this additional storage down below. So the way I squared this out, again, I'm not using the level for its level functionality. I'm using it as a straight edge, right? So I'm building off of the hybrid battery cover. What I did was I'm using 3/4-inch ply. This is actually scrap left over from my Murphy bed build. So it's kind of nice. It's built out of red oak, but obviously that's fancier than it needs to be. So I used some scrap pieces to kind of get this in level. And that's how I measured the length of the feet that are holding this up. And then I also made this little jig that has a piece of 3/4-inch scrap. In this case, it's pine, and a piece of the 2x2. Again, I could use this as ways of getting this level. And I think I did an okay job of getting this level. Another useful tool are these corner clamps. So you can take the 2x2, and obviously these come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. They're not very expensive. So you can get these nice and square. And then I countersunk the screws just to make it flush. And again, 4-inch screws. So really nice square corners with a corner jig like this. I'll put a link in the description. This is all stuff that I couldn't store if I kept the plastic cover, right? I've got this collapsible colander. I can tuck this down beside the wheel well. I've got this collapsible shovel. Again, I can tuck it down underneath. So almost all of this is below where that cover would be. And that's fine. You can keep that cover if you want. You could still have the storage, but I don't see the point. You're gaining, I think, probably 15 to 20% more storage in this compartment by removing all of that and building your own cover. And then here's what I came up with basically to replace the bench seat. So, I mean, hopefully you can tell for scale, right? My foot's almost a foot long. So you're getting a box that's 40 to 50 inches wide and a foot deep for storage by doing it this way. So the only reason the top is a little bit longer was because the door opens up a bit, and I decided to take advantage of that space. And then the back legs are shorter than the front legs. And so I did the same thing as the back. I built this rectangle on the top with a center brace, and then I used bits of scrap in combination with the straight edge to get this in square. So let's see what this looks like in the back. So this comes in, and I basically measured it to be flush with where your feet would go down. It's right now not attached to anything. So if you bring our straight edge forward, right now it's such that if I put my little bit of 3/4 inch, it ends up being flat with the rest of it. So let me bring you around and show you. Yeah, so this is how I built this. So you build the top first. And then I'm basically holding this up to my straight edge with a little piece of 3/4 inch scrap or whatever you're using to build your platform. The straight edge, and now this is all straight. It's not level. Don't forget, I'm not using this as a level. Your car's not going to be level unless you park it on a level surface. But this is straight. So this will be straight in line, give or take about 1/8 of an inch with the thing. So again, I think all cars are going to be different. These front feet, they're almost exactly, I think they are exactly a foot tall. So like I said, you've got a foot deep box in place of the seat cushion here, and they're flat on the bottom. The back ones, and again, I think every car is going to be different. But these worked out on a Gen 3 Prius to 15 degrees. So I measured that. So if anyone's copying that, these have a 15-degree cut on the bottom. This middle one's also cut at 15 degrees. But so you can see those ribs that are there. So what I did was I drilled there's 3 of them. I drilled a 1-inch hole. You can see that I cut most of it off, and then I cut it at 15 degrees. And so it's kind of not perfect, but it's covering that ridge a little bit better than it would have otherwise. And again, if we just back out and look, you can see the gap here where I don't have my little 3/4 inch. And then here I've got my 3/4 inch, and it's square. One interesting thing on this Gen 3 Prius, there actually is this bracket here that part of the seat was attached to. And so I think what I'm going to do is use this, and this is already threaded. So if we come down a bit, there was this little metal bracket down here, and I just took a piece of 2x4 here and attached it to here. Now this is not meant to withstand a crash or anything like that. The only reason I put the 2 bolts in was to make sure that this was squared off. Then it's screwed in here, right? So this is, it's not going to survive a crash. But the idea was because this, if you brake with the car, this piece could like tip forward, or if you stand here, it could roll forward. So it's basically attached on both sides. So I had to use a 2x4 on this side. For whatever reason, the distance was just different on this side, so the bracket was a little bit further. So I used a 2x6 here, again, just bolting it in so that it could be there. So I didn't drill any holes. These were existing pre-tapped structures in the frame that were related to the seats. And so this just keeps this one from moving forward. All right, so this is me from the future again. I lost the footage of the front part of the platform. The good news is that this is actually the easiest part of the build because it's completely square, except for the cutout you have to do here. So if anyone's keeping score, I know I haven't been giving measurements, but this is 50 inches by 29 inches. And it's completely square, except for you do have to make a cutout for this part of the console, right? So it slides back and then this up and opens. So it was relatively easy to just trace around it and then grab the jigsaw. So I sliced it up the middle, and then if you look at this, it opens here. So this cutout here is entirely because this is where the frame is underneath. So it's attached to the frame here and here, and then it's open. So it sort of has this L shape, and you may be able to see on the camera that I don't know what I was thinking. When I originally built this, I actually cut it here so that this stuck all the way out. But then having this just sticking out was ridiculous. It got in the way of anything I was trying to put down here. So I cut it, and then I just used my biscuit joiner to join this. Hopefully you don't have to make that mistake, and you can cut the kind of L shape out yourself. But just keep that in mind. Again, I don't know what I was thinking, but like having unobstructed access here is smart. And so then, yeah, there's just 2 of these compartments that open up from either side. And because I left the sides open, you don't always have to open this to gain access to everything. So we're skipping ahead a little bit here, but I've got like my camp table and chair and hatch tent and awning. All of them can be accessed by just sliding them out from the door here, and I don't even have to open this to access those longer things. The only complicated part of this is that there's another piece of the cover to the hybrid battery. Previous segment, you only saw this part, but then there's this part that also attaches on and could kind of fold up and down as the seats went back. So if the seats were up, this would kind of fold with the seats, if that makes sense. And I found that this piece was already a 1/4 inch thick. And because there was this unfinished bit here, what I decided to do was underneath of this, I just took 2 pieces of 1/4 inch ply. I literally used this to trace the template. And I've got 2 pieces of 1/4 inch ply that are attached to that wooden frame that replaces the seat. So the storage here, even though the door hinges here, the storage actually goes all the way back to the back part of this bit of wood. So yeah, there's just a little bit of 2 layers of 1/4 inch ply glued together, attached to the frame that then square this out. The only other thing to talk about with the seat storage is that I decided to put 1/4 inch ply on the front of this so that the wheel or like the footwell storage space would be separate from this storage space. To be honest, I'm not sure how good of an idea that was. But yeah, I don't know if you can see it. It's really, I can't really get the camera in, but the 1/4 inch ply lines up here, and it just goes down into where the frame curves up for the footwells. And it's just a rectangle. There's no curves or anything. So it's the length of this and whatever the height of the bench that you make is. And we'll see if I keep this, but to my mind, it just makes a little bit of extra organization between these cabinets and this little footwell storage here. All right, and then later I went ahead and I added these spring struts that can hold up the 3 doors. So there's 3 of these, slightly different sizes. I'll put links to these down in the description. You can get, I think you can get like hydraulic ones, or you can get these spring ones, and you literally just break the spring. And when the spring is taut, it holds it tight. The 2 screws go in here, 2 screws go in here. Really no trick to it once you know like the angle you want it to be held open at. The only thing to pay attention to is that it is possible to install these such that this part kind of interferes with this part. So you either have to kind of move this over so that when it closes, it's not in the way, or move this down, or some other situation. But it is possible to install these such that these 2 pieces interfere with each other. But as long as you're aware of that, it's just 4 screws that go into the wood. So there's 1 back here, and there's 2 in the backseat compartments. 1 holds up each door. I don't love these. It is really easy to knock them while you're rummaging around in here, but they are what they are. I think if I could do this again, I might go towards like hydraulic ones, but these are really inexpensive and they work pretty well as long as you're cognizant about not knocking them. All right, so I am 5'8", and I am lying down with my front feet right up against the passenger seat, which is all the way forward. So, I think that almost anyone could sleep here in a Prius, and this is only if you're going to sleep perfectly straight, right? I actually sleep a little bit curled up, which means I have a huge amount of room in here. Okay, so yeah, that wasn't a step-by-step tutorial. I didn't give you a huge amount of dimensions or templates to work with, but hopefully I gave you a sense of just the general way that I went about building the 2 compartments and squaring out my bed platform with the hybrid battery so that if you wanted to do something similar, you could. Hopefully I gave you a sense of just how much storage you can gain by pulling out some of this trim and pulling out the back seats. There's no shame in my mind at all in having a no-build setup, but you do gain a huge amount of storage by especially by taking out seats. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.